Hey guys, today we're going to start off with our black cup that I've gone ahead and prepped, painted black, and then I'm going to add about 20 milliliters of epoxy on top of it. This is a little bit more than I would normally use for doing the epoxy method with glitter. However, I really want this glitter to lay down nice and flat, so I'm going to use a little bit more. I'm going to sprinkle it on pretty lightly at first and then go ahead and get my full coverage so that it's nice and smooth. Once I have this done, I'm going to cover it with about 2 more layers of epoxy, depending if it's smooth after the first or not. So once you get a nice smooth finish, then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so now that we've got a nice smooth finish on our tumbler, we can go ahead and go in with the pearls. I've made a list in the description box of everything that I've used for this step, along with some links. So first, I'm going to take about the first inch on the top of this tumbler and sand it down just a little bit so my glue has something to hold on to. And starting in very small sections, I'm going to apply my glue and start putting my pearls on. And I always start with my large ones. That way I can put them where I want them and space them appropriately and start building up the medium size and the smaller size around the big ones. Now they're very difficult to pick up with my little jewel picker there. So I kind of just use my fingers, plop them on there, space them how I want them to go, and I can move them around since my glue is still wet and get them exactly where I want them to go. So once I've got all of my large ones in place in my small section, I can start picking up my medium-sized ones and placing those where I want them to go, surrounding my large ones. I really have no rhyme or reason for this process. I stick them where I like them and where I think that they're going to look best. And I like to use a wide variety of sizes for this. That way it gives my tumbler as much dimension as possible. So for now, I'm only going to worry about the top band. I'm not going to go in and do my drips quite yet. I want to get a solid base around there, and then I can build my drips where I think that they organically kind of fit into this. So once you're done with that section, just keep moving around the tumbler, doing all of the sections until you have pearls going all the way around. And I'm gonna speed up this process a little bit because it's really tedious and it takes quite a bit of time, and I don't think you guys wanna be sitting here watching me do this for that long. Okay, so now that I've gone ahead and gotten the band around the top finished, I'm gonna look at my tumbler and see if there's anywhere that it looks like a drip might already be starting. Like right here, it's kind of going down a little bit. So I'm gonna build off that, and I'm just gonna go in and add a little bit of glue at a time, and I'm gonna use mostly my smaller pearls for this. And I'm just gonna build it up and put them where I think they're gonna go and start on my drips. Make sure that as you're going, you're gonna fill in any of the spaces that you can with the really, really tiny little pearls. I know it sucks and it's very tedious, but I always like to cover as much black as possible and give it as much dimension as I possibly can by just adding all of the tiny little pearls wherever they'll fit, wherever there's an empty space. So fill up as much as you can, give it as much dimension as you can, use all the sizes that you have. I get mine off of Amazon, and they come in a million packs, and you get like 5 big ones and like a million tiny ones. So use the tiny ones. So if you're like me and you ever get too much glue on one of the drips that you're trying to do, a lot of the times I will stick a little pearl into my pile of glue and kind of just move it around my tumbler where I want it to be. It's clear glue, so you might end up, once it dries, it'll look white on your cup. Once you put epoxy over it, though, that's not going to show up. So if you have dried glue where they're not pearls, it's not a huge deal at this point. Don't worry about it. So just make all your drips. You can do as many or as little as you want. I normally do about 3 on a 20-ounce traditional tumbler. That's a pretty good number for me. That's how I like it. Sometimes I'll do 4, but for the most part, it's just 3. But if you want to put 5 or 6 or 2, I'm going to go ahead and speed this up now so you don't have to watch me do every single drip, because as I told you, it's very tedious and it takes quite a while. So enjoy watching me do it really, really fast. Okay, now that our pearls are on there and dry, I like to let them dry for about 20 minutes at least. I'm gonna grab my UV resin. And I typically use Alumilite's pearlescent powder for this one and mix it in. I use quite a bit in there to make it sparkle a lot. I'm gonna start working at the top rim in very small sections. I just put a little bit on there and I let it run in between my pearls. And be very careful because it's going to be very thin and runny and it's gonna drip everywhere. So small sections, be careful. Sorry, my camera angle sucked right here. I didn't realize. So, yep, see, it's gonna drip. So small sections, a little bit at a time, smooth it out how you want it, and then cure it with your light. And I only cure it for 10 seconds, 15 seconds maybe. I don't need it to be completely hard right now. I just need it to stop running. I'll go back and give it a full cure once it's already done. Or if it's like a really sunny day outside, like it's been here at least, I'll stick it outside for an hour once I'm done. And by the time I go back, it's completely cured and ready for me to start painting it. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to do maybe 10 seconds under the light for each little section that I do, because it's not going to take a whole lot to make it stop running, and that's the goal. So when you do the second section, it's really not hard to make sure it meets up and is even with the first one. You just kind of pile it on there. And again, just like with the pearls, I'm only going to do the top rim at this point. I'm not going to go down into my drips yet, because I want to worry about the top before I mess with my drips. Once you do make it down into the drips, it's just about the same. I just used such a very small amount, and I always like to make sure that my drip on the cup is like facing straight up. That way it's not tilted and going to run. And if it does run a little bit, I'll just wipe it up with my finger real quick and cure it, because I don't want it to be a big runny mess. I just want it to be concentrated over those pearls. And I also don't want it to be too thick on the pearls. So find what works for you, whichever way you want to do it. Okay, so now I'm going to speed you guys up again so you don't have to sit here and watch me do every little thing. Okay, once we have that fully cured, it's time to go in and color our drips. So I've got my alcohol ink markers here from Arteza, and this is my favorite way to color these. I've used the alcohol ink bottles, with the paintbrush. Don't really like it, never cared for how it turned out, but once I tried these, I will never do them a different way. So I'm just gonna color whatever section that I want to first, and just make sure you're getting it down in there in between all of your pearls. And once I have like a decent section going, I'm gonna start on the next color. And once I start getting the next color on, I'm just going to use my finger to pretty much smear it together to blend it. So I'm gonna go in with my green, and I'll overlap my green a little bit into my orange so that it mixes and blends together very smoothly. And that way I have a nice transition from each color. Your fingers are gonna get a little bit messy while you're doing this. And if you would rather use a paintbrush to do this, or a Q-tip, or a piece of foam, I don't know, anything you can think of, you can get creative, you can use whatever you want. I prefer to use my fingers. So you can see here how nicely that starts to blend together once you're kind of mixing the two. And you're just going to kind of continue that throughout the cups with your different colors. You can make the sections as big or as little as you want to. Whatever colors, get creative, make it your own. I like to pick colors that blend well and play well with each other. And I've found that these colors really do. And even still, once I'm done coloring it and blending it with my fingers, I will still go back in with a very fine point paintbrush and get out any of the lines that I don't like, or any more blending that I think might need to happen at the end. So once we've got all of our painting or coloring and finger smudging done, I'm going to go in with my paintbrush. I have a very thin point paintbrush. I will list my paintbrush set in the description box because I'm obsessed with this. And I'm going to dip it in my alcohol just a little bit, and anywhere that I see that might need a little bit more blending or hasn't blended as much as I would like it to, I'm going to go over that now and make sure that I get it exactly how I want it to be. Once I'm happy with all of my blends and how everything looks, I'm going to set this aside. I did this one really late at night, so I let it just sit for the entire night. And in the morning, I sprayed it with clear sealer twice. That way I knew that my alcohol ink wasn't going to go anywhere when I put epoxy over it. Alright, once that's dry, I'm going to stick my decal on there, whatever you want to use, and go in with a really light layer of epoxy. I like doing really thin layers for this, just so it doesn't pool up underneath those bubbles and create a mess. So I ended up getting some white on here, as you can see. I don't know what happened. I was able to sand it out, luckily, so that was great. Once I have my first layer cured, I'll typically go in and use my knife and clean up the top rim, sand it down really nice and smooth. That way when I go in with my second layer, once that's cured, it's all done. I'll also take that time in between my first and second layer to really sand down anything that might be sticking out. My bottom rim I'll sand down, make sure that's nice and smooth. Just be careful if you're sanding over the decal. Alright guys, that's it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe because I'm going to be making a lot more of these, and check out my Facebook and Instagram and TikTok.